it came out of the vision of Barack and Michelle Obama. Before they became the first lady and the president, they were working to make that community better. And so they were community builders from the beginning. It was amazing for me to meet them.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Wisdom Nuggets Unlocked, the show that brings you exclusive interviews with highly successful people in their respective fields who made a mark in their world. My name is David, and besides my own newsletter, Wisdom Nuggets, I'm a blogger and influencer and currently study law in Seoul, South Korea. With that being said, today I have a really special guest with me. He studied at Columbia University. He's the CEO of South Ventures. He's a TEDx speaker. He is an Obama leader. And he also, and this is really respectful, overcame depression. So thank you so much for joining us today, Joe Lim.
Hi.
Thank you, Joe, for taking your time. I know that you're a very busy person. Today, I want to basically dive deep into several topics. But first, I always start off with the story of my guests because I want them to kind of give them a platform where they can share their story. And I think you have a lot to share. So can you elaborate on how you basically became the man you're today?
Wow, that's gonna be a long story. I traveled a lot when I was younger, not by my own choice, but because of my parents. So I grew up in a few countries. I was born in Korea, but then I was in Indonesia for a few years, and I was in the UK for a few years. I was in the US for a few years, and then by my own choice, I was in South America and Africa, working there and also, doing voluntary work and stuff like that. Because of my unique upbringing, my parents were very religious. And so, I always had this worldview where it was right to do something that benefits humanity, right? And so that was instilled in me for a very long time. But things took a lot of turns. And for being somebody who lived in so many countries, I did not adapt that well. It was very hard for me to make new friends all the time. And at that time, I was a very small boy, especially when I went to the US. There's a lot of bullying happening, and there was some racist activities going on, including physical assault, and calling people names is just one thing, but it was very different when you had some very big boys beat you up just for being an Asian boy. And so that was my experience growing up, and this is in LA, very tumultuous times and a lot of gang activity. And so just to disclose a little bit, in high school, as an act of, I guess, both rebellion and also an act of survival, I had to join a gang of my own, and that was a very interesting experience for me, being in a gang for about 2 years and living that life. But things took another turn when I went to university, and I've met some very good people in my life who wanted to invest in me. So that was the beginning of where I learned that the biggest investment and the best investment you can make in life is to invest in people. And not just to invest in people, but while working with these people, I realized I wanted to be much like them. I wanted to be invested into different people's lives. And I realized that it's not enough to just invest in people, but you really need to be selective in investing your time and energy and efforts into certain types of people. Invest in people who invest in people. And so that was kind of a reproductive and a regenerative way to invest your time and energy into something that is totally worthwhile, because you know that the people who got invested in will be spending their time and energy into others doing the same, essentially replicating what you do. And I think that's one of the things that really led to my, I guess, if you could call my life a success. The most successful moments came, I think, because I was able to spend a lot of time investing myself into helping others grow. And when I did that, I learned a lot about myself. I learned about my own shortcomings, and a lot of the things that I would say and I would do for the people who I've invested in, I took those words for myself as well. A lot of it, were things that I said to myself. I majored in computer science and economics and business. I never really got to do that because I got into this whole business of doing nonprofits. And so I wanted to find ways where I could identify problems in society and find ways to fix it, find solutions for it, organize people to make life better for everybody else. And that's something I really wanted to do. When I joined the UN 2014, that's when all the things kind of came together. I began this initiative where we started identifying startups that were essential to the UN's success. We started a platform called Citypreneurs, and this program was able to kind of lure in a bunch of social ventures that were out to solve the biggest problems in society, and they're using technology and business to do that. While my background and my major were exactly technology and business, and so my worlds kind of collided together into that one program, and we ran that program not only in Asia where it started, but we ran it in Europe, we ran it in Africa, we ran it in the United States. And so, it was something that really created a ripple effect. We had other friends creating their own programs based on our model in partnership with us. We didn't feel like, we had to create this one brand for ourselves. We wanted to co-own the brand. And so that's something, that got started in 2017, and now it's still running in Korea at the moment. And after that, I decided I wanted to, get into finance, because I was always somebody who really believed that money is ineffective in changing the realities of countries that are not doing well. Over time, while I was working at the United Nations, I realized that money does matter. Money can move things, but it just needs to be utilized by people who are best meaning. Money is just like technology, it's just like any other tool in your shed, where you could use it to destroy people, but you could use it also to build things up. Actually, without money, no nonprofits could actually survive. And so I got into the business of channeling money into the right places so that it'll be solving the largest problems of our world as we speak. So that's something that I'm currently working on, and to do that, I joined small startups in order to be on the receiving end of money, and then building myself up in a different kind of career. So it's been about 3 years into that transition. I'm currently now a venture capitalist and also a private equity kind of money mover. I do personal investments. I work with people who issue what we call social impact bonds, and social impact bonds are a very unique system that allows money to be able to solve problems while making more money. And so it's kind of a dream come true for any type of social worker. But that's something that I've been sort of spending a lot of time with.
Yeah, your story is really inspiring, especially the fact that you were in a in a gang is kind of interesting, because based on your background, you could have ended up in a on the wrong path basically. But luckily, I think through coincidence, you met these people who brought you back on the right path. And since then, and I think throughout your whole life, this whole kind of symbol of helping other people because of your religious family as well as your own experience, I think it really reflects the person you are right now, because right now you're also trying the best basically to invest in social startups and helping them to become better. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into that aspect. I watched your TEDx talk on YouTube where you talk about doing business for
Oh
good,
God. Yeah.
and it was really interesting to
Yeah.
see what would you say are the biggest issues we have right now that we should face or that startups are facing, and where you kind of try your best to support them.
It's my TEDx talk is actually quite an embarrassment for me. I That was actually the time when I was struggling a lot with depression, because work was an overload for me, and like any other Asian person, I was totally on overdrive for a very long time. I was not in a good state while I delivered the TEDx talk, and so giving you the backdrop of the story, the United Nations has done something well. What they did well is they were able to identify the points of major need in the world where things needed changing, and it goes from poverty to hunger, all the way to health issues, to urban issues. And if you look at the 17 sustainable development goals, the goals list out about 169 points that needs changing right now. And unfortunately, it's actually going backwards. And especially in Asia, where I'm living in, a lot of the sustainable development goals are progressing backwards, especially because of COVID. But even before COVID, it was going backwards. And so we need a major intervention backed by people and a network of intellectuals who are able to identify the problem, understand the problem, and create very effective solutions for it. But we also need to utilize businesses as a medium to sustainably solve that problem. Just to answer your question, there are a lot of issues that really need changing. But something that we also need to realize is that when there's a problem, somebody is willing to pay to solve that problem. And so that's how businesses work. And so I believe that the bigger the problems are, the bigger the business opportunities exist under that problem. And so how do we mine that problem so that in a capitalistic society, we could use capital to create changes that are long lasting.
What do you think is the reason, besides COVID, why this whole progress is actually going the other way, like backwards? Is it because social startups are less profitable than others? Because we all know that we have a lot of problems, as mentioning climate change. There's so much movement going on in that
Yeah.
sector, but everything is progressing so slowly. And as you said, we're running out of time in many sectors. So, yeah, what is your stance on that? Why do you think is it going backwards?
Yeah, so this is something that we need to really go back to history to find out. And your point about social ventures or social enterprises not being profitable enough, that's another set of problems. But essentially, it's not a social venture problem. Social ventures are trying to be the solution to this, and they're not effective. That's another issue. The root of the problem is the way that we have industrialized, the way that we've created our industries from was not sustainable from the beginning. And in economics term, we call this externalities, right? And for anyone who studied economics, externalities is just side effects of doing business that you never really accounted for. So let's say that a company is utilizing a ton of wood per day for their business, and they sell a desk for $100, and in those $100, that $100 pays for the profits of the company. It pays for the people that they hired. It pays for all the equipment. It pays for all the transportation, but it never paid for the damage that it did to the biosystem. And so until we price in that externality, we're never going to be able to really solve this problem, right? And so that's something I really wanted to emphasize. And there's a lot of politics going on both sides, right? So, a lot of the Western world developed from the fact that they extorted from nature, right? And, they created a lot of pollution, a lot of issues that are already existing today. And now, they're coming and saying, well, here's a lot of, pollution and natural issues. And so, well, we're going to have to, cut down on our CO2 emissions, whereas, countries like China or other burgeoning countries that are on a steep rise right now, they're like, you guys did the same thing to get rich. Why can't we do the same thing? Just because we're later than you guys, it's just not fair. That's the whole line of politics, global politics that are around this issue. And so they have these conference of the parties of the UNFCCC where they're meeting about climate change, and they can't come to a solid agreement because they're all kind of just fighting on who gets a bigger cut of this externality. There's a lot of movement in the business sector right now. The ESG investing has become a lot more mainstream, but ESG in itself cannot solve this whole externality problem. We're gonna have to rethink how we do business. We're gonna have to rethink how business could last in a longer term. If we think from a short-term perspective, if we think, okay, well, if we're gonna maximize profits for this year, we're just never going to get there. So we need to think of alternative ways where we do business. And social ventures are definitely not profitable enough. And we're going to have to find a way to make them more profitable. That's something I'm working on. But at the end of the day, having good social ventures is not going to be the solution to this. We're going to have all major enterprises, all major industry companies transition into a much more sustainable model in itself. They're going to have to own up to their externalities and help other companies to do the same. And so that's going to have to take a whole movement. And if that doesn't happen in time, then we're in a lot of trouble. There's also a very quick fix to all of this, which I think might be a lot more attainable. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Green Revolution. It's not about climate change, but this revolution had to do with how we farm. Now, Southeast Asia and Asian countries have benefited a lot from these farming methodologies because, just about 50, 60 years ago, there was a doomsday message. Somebody said, okay, at this rate of population growth, we're going to eat ourselves to death within 30 years. So by 1980, we would be all dead in the world because we had too much population and we didn't have enough ability to produce that right amount of food. Somebody came up with a technology, an agricultural revolution, where they were able to produce much more rice in a much more efficient way. And so that actually solved the problem of world hunger or extinction, and we're still alive today. It's 2023. Technology has the ability to extend our time on this earth much longer. And so I do believe that there are moonshot ideas that still could play out to solve many of these huge issues. But at the end of the day, if we don't create a sustainable system to own up to all of the externalities that are out there, we're gonna have to continue to rely on these one-off random technological advances for it to solve a problem, and it's mostly going to be temporary.
So you're basically saying that we shouldn't rely on technological innovations because it could come, but it's not really sure if there are going to be technological innovations who will solve all of these problems. So we should transition to a business model that is more sustainable in many ways, but it takes a lot of time. It's going very slowly because everybody's discussing, not a lot of action going on. They have to discuss everything in theory until the last detail. But you mentioned that you want to, or that you already are working on some solutions as of right now to make social ventures more profitable. What are you working on right now to make that happen?
Just to clarify on what I said, I do believe in technology. I think we should utilize technology to the best of our abilities to solve our immediate problems now. And while doing that, it's probably going to make a lot of money. But if we think that it's going to solve all of our problems, then we're wrong, is what I'm saying. Yeah, so utilize everything we got, but until we transition to a sustainable business model, it's going to be hard. I mean, we're just going to have to be creating more problems while we're solving it. Another thing, and I think you're completely right about politicians being, all talk. And that's, I think, because that's what their job is. And something I realized the hard way working at the United Nations is that the job of the United Nations is to provide a safe location for people to talk about where we need to go next. We really need to realize that the fabric of society is structured in a way where we now live in a majorly democratic society, right? What that means is that the politicians who are up there talking are people representing the voters, right? And so, it really matters what people think. And I think, David, you're doing something amazing because, having podcasts like this, even the smallest ones, really matter because people need to start thinking differently for politicians to change. And when people are influenced to think differently, we're going to see ripples of change around the world. Why? Because how often do we vote, right? We vote maybe once or twice a year at most. And our politicians come out that way. But another famous activist in the climate change movement said that we are voting every day by what we buy, right? So everything that we purchase is an active vote against what kind of world we want. If we could be consumers that demand something else, you'll be incredibly surprised how quickly companies and industries, even the biggest companies, are willing to change their minds on their product in order to fit what the consumers want. So if the consumers want a hell-bent, destroyed world and they don't care, then we're just going to have that kind of an industry. But the moment the consumer says, hey, if I had a choice, same price, but one actually helps nature and the other destroys nature, I would choose the one that helps nature. I think it's a powerful force that the young people of our generation actually do care. I think this is where the movement needs to come. And so, something that I've been working on, not the social ventures part, but something that I've been working on in order to accelerate the masses thinking this way is to work with people who are highly influential, especially the celebrities of our world. Honestly, for about 20 years, I've been doing nonprofit work. We've been doing a lot of education, but, if we do like paid programs, sometimes I would reach 200 people, 400 people. If I go as a guest speaker, yeah, maybe I would speak to a few thousands of people. But then what I realized was, one huge celebrity does something incredibly powerful in terms of changing their lifestyles to be more eco-friendly, and they show it on Instagram Reels, and you realize that like 200,000 people liked it, and that's just the speed at which these kind of thoughts become adopted if we're talking to the right people of influence. One of the companies that I've invested in is an entertainment company, getting my head into the entertainment world, trying to see ways where celebrities could make an impact in a positive way by demonstrating and modeling a life and thought process of somebody who is, eco-friendly, human-friendly, and just a good person. Luckily for me, I mean, Korea and K-pop has sort of taken over a lot of music charts, and that's been a very good leverage for me to work from. And to go back to your original question about how can we help social ventures become more profitable, one of the ways that I'm working on is called social impact bonds. Now, this leverages on the fact that governments are very poor result makers. The amount of money, the government budgets that are being spent every year is astonishing, but the amount of results that money produces is also equally astonishing because it's so low. Like, how do you spend that much money and do that little, right? This is a shared sentiment not just by Koreans but by everyone around the world. They know some money is not being spent well, and they know a lot of the money is being pocketed, especially in the more developing countries. Now, something that social impact bonds is able to do is to utilize government money in a way that it actually creates results. If the money doesn't create results, then the government doesn't need to pay for it. For the taxpayer, this is a really great alternative way to spend the tax money. And for the nonprofit sector, it's actually a really great way because now they're going to be forced to create the results that they receive money for. Before, it was a lot about spending the money. Like, governments cared about spending the money. And so at the end of the year, if you didn't spend all your budget, then you have a problem, right? But now, we're transitioning that into a result-based payment. Governments are able to run projects that actually create the social results we want. And then you could create a financial instrument out of it so that people could profit from investing into those projects. Now, I won't go into detail about what social impact bonds are. It's an amazing tool to use. Would love to do another. It's going to take another hour or two to explain this whole thing. There is a 5-minute video on social impact bonds on YouTube. I didn't produce it. I really recommend the listeners to look into it to see how every one of us could participate in creating social impact bonds.
I think the reason why you're so passionate about this whole topic, it really shows in your person, in the way you communicate. And that's probably also the reason why you are Obama leader, or why you're in the movement of the Obama leadership program. For everyone who doesn't know, I think it's like a program for aspiring leaders who want to have an impact in this whole sustainability or a social problem setting. You undergo like a specific program, right, to shape you into a future leader. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that as well? Because I haven't had the chance to talk to an Obama leader before.
Right. I would love to have more people join this Obama Leader program. They select about 35 leaders every year, I think. What the Obama Leaders program is kind of, it came out of the vision of Barack and Michelle Obama. They were social changers themselves, right? Before they became the first lady and the president, um, uh, in the poorest parts of Chicago, they were working to make that community better, and so they were community builders from the beginning. It was amazing for me to meet them and realize that they never left that identity even after they became president or first lady. Their vision was, what if we get 1 million Baracks and 1 million Michelles and we put them together into a network? What would the world look like? Was their vision, gathering leaders from all around the world. They started with Africa. The second was in the Asia Pacific. Now they have a Europe one. I think they're doing a US one soon. And so they're gathering leaders from all around the world. They're networking them, helping us meet each other. And it was just a very rewarding experience for me. Being selected was, a feel-good kind of a thing, but also meeting the other Obama leaders was the biggest reward I could ever get. Not because they were just the chosen people. When I started my walk after I graduated from my computer science and business degree, I somehow landed like the really good majors, and so after that I was able to go into a tech company or work there with a very decent pay. But my passion was really to explore the world and to see what issues, what problems there are in every corner of the world. And so I traveled a lot and I tried to experience it myself and to be among everybody else who is suffering from each of these difficulties. And so that was my passion. I walked the walk. I tried to extend myself as much as possible. And it took a lot of toll. I was put in a gunpoint for many times because I was just in the wrong place. And not because I was in a gang. This is after, this is when I was volunteering in South America, the people just robbing me left and right. There was a lot of price to pay. There was a lot of efforts put into really understanding the problem and trying to act on it. And, the biggest reward of being with Obama leaders was that I was able to be among those who thought the same way, and many of those who were willing to make similar sacrifices. You realize that, okay, I made many important life decisions along the way, and it cost me a lot, and it made me feel alone in the world many times. My biggest reward is that That whole journey led me to here. Now I realize 10 years ago, 5 years ago, these people made the same decisions, and now we're able to meet each other. We all kind of knew. It was a very like heartwarming moment for us because we all knew the price each of us had to pay to get there.
The way it works is that there are a lot of people, and you get selected if you're basically worthy of it.
Yeah, I guess so. So you do you make an application. I think the application is open every October. They bring you into a location. They fly you in, and then you become trained for like 3 days or 5 days, and you get to meet the Obamas.
Do you have any last remarks to the audience before we leave?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get to detail, my life story, but just in short, I was somebody who did not believe, money could change everything because I thought, people change everything. But I realized that we need to work together with the system. We need the people who are thinking in positive terms and also in strategic terms and people who are committed. But we also need to be able to really leverage this whole world system that is, the bloodline is money. And so how do we I would love to be connected. I would love to work with people who think along the same lines. Those people who are wanting to change the structure of society, but using the terms of capitalism. I just wanted to make an open invitation.